Jerry Krause, the Bulls general manager, says, quote, "Organizations win titles, not players," end quote.
I do sincerely believe that organizations as a whole win. One part of it can't win alone.
That sentence, that single 14-word sentence spoken by Chicago Bulls general manager Jerry Krause, might be the most hated sentence in the history of modern sports. To the media, it was arrogance. To the fans in Chicago, it was blasphemy. But to Michael Jordan, that sentence was a declaration is less than 0.5 is greater than of war. For nearly 2 decades, Michael Jordan and Jerry Krause were locked in one of the most toxic, bitter, and confusing marriages in NBA history. They were the two architects of the greatest dynasty the world has ever seen. They won 6 championships together. They created a global phenomenon that changed culture forever. And yet, they couldn't stand to be in the same room. Jordan bullied him. He mocked his weight. He mooed like a cow when Krause walked onto the team bus. He blamed him for destroying the Bulls. But here is the uncomfortable question that nobody, especially Michael Jordan, wants to answer. Was Jerry Krause actually the villain? Or was he the unsung genius who had to save Michael Jordan from himself? This is not just a story about basketball. This is a story about ego, betrayal, and the tragic irony that sometimes the person you hate the most is the only person who can help you win. This is the complete story of the beef that built the Chicago Bulls, and then tore them apart. To truly understand why the greatest player of all time hated his boss, you have to go back to before the fame. You have to understand who Jerry Krause was before he was the villain. Jerry Krause was not an ex-player. He wasn't cool. He didn't have swagger. He was a short, overweight, socially awkward man who wore trench coats and looked more like a furious accountant than a basketball executive. He was the antithesis of Michael Jordan. But Jerry Krause was a savant. In the 1960s and 70s, he was known as the Sleuth. He was a basketball detective. While other scouts were watching the big games at Duke and North Carolina, Krause was driving through snowstorms to watch Division II games in empty gyms in North Dakota. He was the guy who discovered Earl the Pearl Monroe at a tiny HBCU when nobody else was looking. He was the guy who discovered Jerry Sloan. He worked in baseball and basketball simultaneously. He didn't care about hype. He cared about hidden value. He was the ultimate underdog, a man who had been rejected by the cool kids his entire life and who decided to beat them by outworking them. So, when he was hired to take over the Chicago Bulls in 1985, he didn't care about making friends. He didn't care about being liked. He cared about fixing a disaster. And make no mistake, the Bulls were a disaster. Before Krause arrived, the team was known as a traveling cocaine circus. They were losing. They were unprofessional. And in the middle of this wreckage was a young Michael Jordan, frustrated, isolated, and already deeply distrusting of management. Krause walked into this environment with a mandate to clean house, and the very first thing he did was clash with the god of Chicago. The war started almost immediately, and it didn't start over a trade or a contract. It started with a broken bone. In just his second season, Michael Jordan broke his foot. For a competitor like Mike, sitting on the sidelines was torture. It was a prison sentence. He was convinced he could play. In fact, he was so obsessed with returning that he went behind the team's back. He returned to the University of North Carolina and started playing secret pickup games, dunking on college kids while the Bulls thought he was resting in bed. When he returned to Chicago, he marched into Jerry Krause's office and demanded to play. He told them his foot was fine. He told them he was ready to save the season. Krause looked him in the eye and said, no. The doctors had told Krause there was a 10% chance Jordan could re-injure the foot. If that happened, his career was over. The franchise was over. Krause wasn't willing to gamble the next decade on a 10% risk. So, he did the one thing you never do to a deity. He put a leash on him. Krause set a strict time limit, 7 minutes per half. And he didn't just set the rule, he enforced it like a warden. Krause would stand on the sidelines with a stopwatch, staring at the court. Even if the game was on the line, even if Jordan was on fire, even if the crowd was screaming, Krause would signal the coach to pull him out the second the clock hit 7 minutes. Jordan was humiliated. He felt betrayed. He felt like a racehorse being kept in the stable. But the nail in the coffin, the moment that truly turned this relationship into a blood feud, was what Jordan claims Krause said to him during a meeting. According to MJ, Krause looked at him and said, "You are Bulls property now, and we tell you what to do." Property. That word shattered the relationship forever. To Jordan, basketball was an art form. It was an expression of his soul. To Krause, basketball was asset management. From that day forward, Jordan decided that Jerry Krause was not his partner. He was the enemy. Here is the tragedy of this story. Jerry Krause spent the next decade making brilliant, genius-level moves that Michael Jordan absolutely hated. Let's look at the 1986 draft. Jordan had a specific demand. He wanted the Bulls to draft a guard from Duke named Johnny Dawkins. He lobbied for it. He told the press about it. He demanded it. Krause ignored him. He drafted a big man named Brad Sellers. Jordan was so furious that he tortured Sellers in practice for a year, verbally abusing him, making his life a living hell just because he was Jerry's pick. But then look at 1987. While Jordan was focused on winning scoring titles, Krause was scouring the backwoods of Arkansas. He found a lanky, unknown kid playing at the University of Central Arkansas, a school nobody had heard of. A kid who used to be the equipment manager. His name was Scottie Pippen. Krause famously said, "When I saw Scottie play, I almost had an orgasm." He knew he had found a diamond in the rough. On draft night, he pulled off a complicated trade to get Pippen. In the same draft, he grabbed Horace Grant. In one night, against the advice of almost everyone, and without Michael Jordan's help, Krause built the foundation of a dynasty. Jordan didn't find Scottie Pippen, Jerry Krause did. But the move that truly broke Jordan's heart happened in 1988. At the time, Jordan's best friend on the team was Charles Oakley. Oakley was his bodyguard. When the bad boy Pistons would try to take Jordan's head off, Oakley was the one throwing punches. Jordan loved him. He felt safe with him. So what did Krause do? He traded him. He shipped Oakley to New York for an awkward, aging center named Bill Cartwright. Jordan and Oakley found out about the trade on television. They were devastated. Jordan felt exposed. He felt like Krause had stripped away his armor on purpose. This was when the bullying went to another level. Jordan and the team nicknamed Krause Crumbs because he always seemed to have donut crumbs on his shirt. They mocked his height. They mocked his clothes. When Krause would get on the team bus, the players wouldn't say hello. Instead, Michael Jordan would start mooing like a cow. It was high school bullying at an NBA level. But here's the hard truth. Krause was right. The Bulls didn't need a bodyguard. They needed a center who could pass, clog the lane, and make free throws. Bill Cartwright was the missing piece. Without that trade, the Bulls probably never get past the Pistons. Krause took away Jordan's best friend to give him a championship. As the championships piled up, 1991, 1992, 1993, you would think the beef would end. Success heals all wounds, right? Wrong. The success only made it pettier. The 1992 Olympics is the perfect example of how deep this hatred ran. This was the Dream Team, the greatest assembly of talent in the history of the universe. Jordan and Pippen were in Barcelona, focused on gold medals, but they had a side mission, a personal mission. Jerry Krause had drafted a Croatian phenom named Toni Kukoc. Krause was obsessed with him. He wouldn't stop bragging about him to the media. He called Kukoc the future of the Bulls. Meanwhile, Scottie Pippen was severely underpaid and fighting for a new contract. Pippen and Jordan took this personally. They felt Krause was courting this European kid while ignoring the champions he already had. So, when the USA played Croatia in the Olympics, Jordan and Pippen didn't just play basketball, they hunted Toni Kukoc. It was sadistic. They trapped him in the backcourt. They denied him the ball. They physically battered him. They wanted to embarrass him on a global stage. After the game, Jordan told reporters, "We weren't playing against Toni Kukoc. We were playing against Jerry Krause in a Croatia jersey." Think about that. The two best players in the world used the Olympics to settle a score with their general manager. And yet, when Kukoc finally came to the Bulls a year later, who was right? Krause was. Kukoc was brilliant. He became the sixth man of the year. He was the critical piece of the second three-peat. Once again, Krause's obsession paid off, and Jordan's pettiness was proven wrong. By 1995, the Bulls were at a crossroads. Jordan had returned from baseball, but they had lost to the Orlando Magic. They had a hole at power forward. They needed toughness. Krause looked at the market and saw one name, Dennis Rodman. The rest of the league had blacklisted Rodman. He was considered uncoachable, a cancer, a ticking time bomb. Jordan was skeptical. Pippen hated him because of the Pistons years. But Krause saw the value. He realized that Rodman was the perfect rebounding machine for the triangle offense. He took the gamble that nobody else would take. He brought the worm to Chicago. The result? 72 wins, 3 more championships, the greatest team in history. Every single piece of the Bulls dynasty, other than Michael Jordan himself, was handpicked by Jerry Krause. He found the coach, he found the sidekick, he found the rebounder, he found the shooters. But success breeds ego, and Jerry Krause was starving for credit. He was tired of the media praising Michael and Phil while mocking him. He was tired of being the punchline. He wanted people to know that he built this machine, not Michael. And that hubris leads us to the end. 1998. The Last Dance. By this point, the relationship was nuclear. Krause was jealous of Phil Jackson. He felt Phil had stolen his team and turned the players against him. Despite the Bulls being the defending champions, despite the fact that they were icons, Krause publicly announced that the end was near. He told the press, with a coldness that is still shocking today, "I don't care if Phil Jackson goes 82-0, he's not coming back next year." It was a power move. It was Krause saying, "I am the architect, I built this, and I can tear it down and build it again." Jordan drew his line in the sand. He told the world, "I will not play for anyone but Phil Jackson." It was a game of chicken, and for the first time, nobody swerved. Krause forced Phil out. He tried to lowball Scottie Pippen. He blew up the greatest team in the history of sports because he believed his own quote that organizations win championships, not just players. He was wrong. The Bulls went into a tailspin they didn't recover from for a decade. Jordan retired. The dynasty died not because they lost on the court, but because the front office filed for divorce. Every legend has a before and an after. In the history of basketball, the after is the Michael Jordan we all know. The six-time champion, the cigar-smoking icon of perfection. But to understand the true peak of this man, you have to understand the before.
3-on-3, Jordan in deep, Jordan all the way, score! He put his right arm out full length, held it, and brought it back as he flew by the basket.
By the summer of 1990, Michael Jordan was the most famous athlete on the planet, and yet he was a tragic figure. He was a man trapped in his own excellence. He had won the scoring titles. He had won an MVP. He had won the Defensive Player of the Year. He was doing things on a nightly basis that defied the laws of physics. But there was a whisper growing in the sports world, a whisper that was becoming a roar. Michael Jordan is a solo act. He's a showman, not a winner. Think about that. The most competitive human being to ever lace up a pair of sneakers was being told by the world that his style of play, his very essence, was a losing formula. Fans love to debate MJ's best year. Was it 88 when he was a human pogo stick? Was it 96 when he led the Bulls to 72 wins? But if you ask the scouts, the historians, and the man himself, they all point to one specific window of time: 1991. This was the year the Air Jordan of the 80 seconds collided with the Black Cat of the 90 seconds. This is the story of the absolute zenith of basketball performance. Chapter 1, The Wall of Pain, 1987 to 1990. To understand 91, we have to look at the scars Michael earned in the years prior. Between 1987 and 1990, Michael Jordan didn't just play basketball. He went to war. His enemy? The Detroit Pistons.
The thing about the Detroit Pistons, I think they tried to change the game of basketball to a certain extent by dirtying up the game. And they won a couple of championships with that, and other teams started to try to pattern themselves behind that.
They were known as the Bad Boys, and they were the most hated team in sports history. Led by Isaiah Thomas and anchored by Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn, the Pistons didn't just want to win, they wanted to inflict physical trauma. They developed the Jordan rules. It wasn't a defensive strategy, it was a street fight.
We had to do everything from a physicality standpoint to stop him.
I don't know how he came out of it alive.
When he was in the air, we had no shot.
You have to stop him before he takes flight, because you know he's not human.
And Chuck Daly, the Pistons coach, famously said, "If Michael goes to the bathroom, follow him." On the court, that meant if Michael took flight, you knocked him out of the air. If he drove the lane, you fouled him across the face. They hit his ribs, they tripped him, they bullied him. For 3 straight years, Jordan hit that Detroit wall. In 1990, it went to a Game 7. Michael was exhausted. Scottie Pippen had a migraine. The Bulls were humiliated. On the bus ride home, Michael sat in the back, tears in his eyes, watching the Pistons celebrate another trip to the finals. He realized that the God-given athleticism he relied on wasn't enough to survive the brutality of the NBA. He didn't just need to be a better player, he needed to be a different human being. Most superstars would have demanded a trade or blamed the refs. Michael Jordan went into the shadows. That summer, he hired a relatively unknown trainer named Tim Grover. Back then, the NBA was different. stars didn't lift heavy weights because they were terrified it would ruin their touch. But Michael told Grover, "I want to be able to take the hit. I want to be the one doing the hitting." This was the birth of the Breakfast Club. 5 or 6 a.m. workouts. Intense, grueling sessions focused on core strength, explosive power, and sheer mass. Michael bulked up from a lean 200 pounds to a rock-solid 218 pounds. The 1,991, Jordan was a physiological marvel. He still had the 48-inch vertical, but now he had the shoulders of a linebacker. He was no longer just running past people. He was powering through them. If a defender tried to hand-check him, Michael would simply brush them off. If they tried to bump him off his path to the basket, he was now heavy enough to hold his line. But the biggest change wasn't in his biceps, it was in his head. While Michael was transforming his body, Phil Jackson and Tex Winter were transforming the Bulls' DNA. They implemented the triangle offense. For a player as dominant as Michael, the triangle was an insult. It was a system based on spacing, constant passing, and read and react movements. It meant that Michael wouldn't have the ball in his hands for 20 seconds of the shot clock. It meant he had to trust teammates like Bill Cartwright, John Paxson, and a young, unproven Scottie Pippen. Michael famously told Tex Winter, "I don't see an I in triangle." Tex fired back, "There is an I in win." Eventually, Michael surrendered to the system, and that's when the league became truly terrified. Because now, you couldn't double-team Michael Jordan anymore. If you did, he'd simply pass to the open man. For the first time, Michael wasn't playing against the defense. He was manipulating it. The 1,991 regular season was a clinic. Michael's scoring dropped to 31.5 points per game, but his efficiency was godlike. He shot 53.9% from the field, a number usually reserved for centers who only dunk. He was the MVP, the first-team All-Defense, and the scoring champion. The Bulls won 61 games. The machine was ready.
At least 3 years before we fully understood the system, and Phil was very patient, as well as Tex, who implemented it all together and came up with the concept. And it just took some time for us to connect and understand that, each other as a team, and act instinctively instead of always knowing exactly a certain place. Systematically, we started to read each other.
The 1,991 playoffs were where the new Michael was unveiled to the world. The first round, the Knicks. New York tried to be the Pistons light. They played dirty, they played slow. In Game 3, Michael drove the lane and delivered one of the most iconic dunks of his career over Patrick Ewing. It wasn't just 2 points, it was a message. The Knicks were swept.
Right comes into Horace Grant.
Now they press. Now the Bulls got to get it up.
A lob pass to Paxson, a jump pass to Jordan off to the left. Michael double teamed on the drive, in for the left, gets chased into the corner, comes right back. Down! Through the foul! Wow!
Oh, powerhouse, JD.
The second round, the Sixers. Charles Barkley was at his absolute physical peak. He was the only man in the league who could match Michael's intensity. In Game 3, Philly stole a win. Michael's response? He didn't just score, he dominated the dirty work. In the closeout, Game 5, Michael put up 38 points and grabbed 19 rebounds. He was a shooting guard, playing like a Hall of Fame center.
Dispatching the Sixers in 5 games, the Bulls had methodically marched through the playoffs' first 2 rounds. And now, the challenge they had awaited all season long was finally at hand.
The conference finals, the exorcism. Then came Detroit. The media predicted another 7-game bloodbath. Instead, they watched an execution. The Bulls didn't just win, they dismantled the Pistons' psyche. Michael was surgical. He wasn't getting rattled by the hard fouls anymore. He was stepping to the line and icing the game. In Game 4, the Pistons realized their era was over. With seconds left on the clock, Isaiah Thomas and the starters walked off the floor without shaking hands. It was the ultimate admission of defeat. The bully had been bullied. The Jordan rules were officially extinct. The 1,991 finals was the dream matchup. The Lakers versus the Bulls, Magic Johnson versus Michael Jordan. The Lakers were the establishment. They were Showtime. They had the rings and the experience. When they stole Game 1 in Chicago, the world held its breath. Is it happening again? Is Michael going to fall short at the finish line? Phil Jackson made the move that changed NBA history. He moved Scottie Pippen onto Magic Johnson. This allowed Michael to play the role of the free safety. He could roam, he could steal, and he could focus on being the most efficient scorer in the world. The move, Game 2. Then came the play that every basketball fan has burned into their memory. Michael drives, rises for a dunk with his right hand, sees Sam Perkins, and while literally hanging in the air for an impossible amount of time, he switches the ball to his left hand and kisses it off the glass. Marv Albert's call said it all. A spectacular move by Michael Jordan. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated genius. The Bulls won by 21. They wouldn't lose again. Game 5 inches, Los Angeles. The Lakers were missing key players, but they fought like champions. Michael, however, was playing the perfect game. He wasn't hunting shots, he was hunting the right play. He finished with 30 points and 10 assists. When the buzzer sounded, the Chicago Bulls were champions for the first time in their history. But the celebration wasn't what people expected. In the locker room, Michael wasn't jumping on tables. He was sitting in a chair, clutching the Larry O'Brien trophy, sobbing. His father, James, stood behind him. For 7 years, Michael had carried the weight of the city, the weight of the selfish labels, and the weight of the Pistons' hits. In that locker room, the god of basketball finally became a man. He averaged 31.2 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 11.4 assists in the finals. He shot 56%. It remains, statistically and visually, the most complete finals performance in the history of the sport. So, why do we say 1991 was better than the 72-win season of '96? In 1996, Michael was a master of the mid-range. He was smart, he was a leader, but he had lost that lightning in his legs. In 1988, Michael was the most athletic thing we'd ever seen, but he didn't have the strength or the team-first mindset. But in 1991, he had both. This was the year Michael Jordan was at his physical absolute maximum while also reaching his mental peak. He was 28 years old. His body was a temple, his mind was a computer, and he finally had a team that believed in him as much as he believed in himself. The advanced metrics don't lie. His 91 playoff run is the highest of his championship years. Win shares. He contributed more to winning in 91 than any other postseason. The eye test. He was a defensive terror, a playmaking wizard, and an unstoppable scorer all at the same time. Michael Jordan would go on to win 5 more rings. He would become a billionaire, a global icon, and a name synonymous with greatness. But if you want to see the masterpiece, the one year where the Air Jordan of our dreams was a reality on the court, you have to look at 1991. It was the year the struggle ended and the dynasty began. It was the year the greatest to ever do it finally did it. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the legend of 1991. Do you think there's any other player in any other year who could have beaten 91 Jordan? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey, click here to see our breakdown of the 1996 Bulls. We'll see you in the next one.